is going to be decisive as to whether you can use the document or not. I mean, I guess the first question behind that rule is, why didn't produce this document before? And unless you have a genuine answer to that, an explanation, I don't think the tribunal will allow you to do to do much about a new document that is not in the record. And I think the time schedule of international arbitration, as far as I can tell, is more and more such that you have a cutoff date before the hearing for producing whatever you want to produce, and that's going to be it. And unless you have a really valid reason not to have to produce something in advance, you will not be allowed to use it. One thing that happened to me in a couple of cases is that the tribunal wanted to have a subset of the record, meaning specific documents that were already in the record to be identified for cross-examination of a particular witness. And I found that a little bit bizarre because, in a way, I can understand the rule that it should be in the record, but if you already put a spotlight and identify the documents you will be discussing with or showing the witness, that gives the witness the possibility to find explanation to whatever, and that may be artificial. On the other hand, I mean, you can take that rule and say, well, I will put so many documents and then I will simply not use them. But I guess the tribunal will not like that either.
Well, can you deal with this by putting in 20 documents and saying, these are documents that we plan to use
yeah, I would rather say 200 documents.
I've seen that, fairly frequently, actually. If there's a procedure to put in documents for cross-examination, the stacks get larger and larger and larger, even if the counsel is just sort of, well, I might maybe use this. And it frustrates the tribunal, but on the counsel side, it's sort of like, well, if you're not going to let me use it, I'm going to err on the side of putting more stuff into the record, even if I don't think I'm going to go there, just to be safe.
Would you expect the tribunal to start combing through, if they were particularly assiduous, and picking out their own inconsistencies?
No.
I wouldn't either, but is there a risk of that? David?
It can happen. It depends. I mean, that's not the usual thing. I think most tribunals are willing to go with the themes that counsel want to, or the advocates want to develop. But occasionally I've sat with colleagues who are busily looking at other things and multitasking as the cross is proceeding. They'll be looking at other documents and inclined to bring up their own questions about it. It's not the norm, but it can happen.
How about style? Is there a way in which you start out the cross-examination, or do you come in belligerent and tough in the view of the fact that there's not much time, you might as well get down to the real confrontation? George, you got a thought on that?
Well, I mean, my general thought is belligerent is never good. I'm not even belligerent in U.S. court actions. I don't think it makes a good impression on a jury. I don't think it makes a good impression on the arbitrators. Tough in the sense that, you insist on getting an answer to your question and you're persistent about it if the witness doesn't answer. I think tribunals are very sort of flexible about that sort of questioning. But I do think this brings up an important point which Carlo alluded to earlier, which is the difference between the way civil law arbitrators and common law arbitrators look at cross-examination. I actually had a Dutch arbitrator come up to us, my colleague and I, at a break, and he said, it's interesting the way you American lawyers do questioning. You ask questions to make a point. And we looked at each other, and our reaction was kind of, yeah, so what other purpose would there be? And, and the other purpose could well be, and this is, I think, illustrated to some extent by some of the awards that I've been involved in recently, and I'm sure all of us have been involved in, where you have a 2-week hearing and then the tribunal issues an award, and all it refers to is the memorials and the exhibits, and has little or no reference to the transcript. And my diagnosis of that, I mean, it could be the cross-examinations were not very good. It could be that the tribunal thinks that all the witnesses who appeared at the hearing are just shills for their party. There are a lot of possible explanations, but my own view is, at least the civil law lawyers, I'd be interested in what the civil law lawyers think about this, who are on the tribunal, aren't really looking for, are you going to destroy the credibility of this witness? Are you going to show him or her to be a liar, as you might do in front of a jury? They are interested in the documents. That's their primary focus, and they want to know, what do these documents mean? Where there's an ambiguity in the document, they want it explained. Inconsistencies in the document, they want those sorted out. And they're not really that interested in the credibility points, and therefore they may listen to what the witnesses have to say, but they're really focusing on, okay, tell me what this document means. That's at least one assumption I have. Now, what you do with that on cross-examination, I mean, I still predominantly ask leading questions. I will weave in an open-ended question from time to time if I think it's safe and I'm not going to get an answer that's going to kill me. But you as a cross-examiner aren't really there necessarily to help the tribunal understand the documents. So I find that a hard process to sort out.
Carlo, to what extent are you, in cross-examination, in your experience, looking at credibility as opposed to clarification of the records and to bring out points in your client's favor?
Well, that's the fundamental question that we always have, meaning why are we doing this? I get the point that civil law professionals are more focused on documents and what's in the document, as opposed to, is this witness credible or not? And as I said, I mean, that's because of our background. I mean, we have limits as to witness testimonies under before civil courts, and we also have limits as to the value of the contract in which witness testimony can be given. Just to give you the extreme example that we have, I mean, our current civil code provides that, as a general rule, then there may be exceptions, but as a general rule, you're not allowed to have witness testimony. You can only have documentary evidence as to contracts below 2.58 euros, which were 5,000 lire before the euro came in. So that's the rule that we have in civil courts. Obviously, it's looked at and applied with flexibility, but that's the background that we have. So I guess the question always is, why are we doing this? I mean, if something is already written in the witness statement, why are you making the leading question to simply confirm what's there? And genuinely, people think, well, why is this guy asking that question? Where does he want to go? I mean, what additional point is he going to achieve by asking that simple question? Then maybe the follow-up question may be more interesting, and so on and so forth. But that's why we are a little bit, we're not as familiar with the process, because, I mean, if something is in the witness statement, that's the most we can get. I mean, we don't see the real advantage of having the witness say, well, yes, but, I mean, it's not a matter, the important rule not to go too far with the questioning. We are steps back, meaning if it's in the witness statement, you don't even ask the first question. That's the kind of approach that we have. And I see why arbitrators from civil law jurisdictions may rely more on witness statement exhibits and the briefs as opposed to the real cross-examination. But going back to your question, credibility, I don't think we put much emphasis on credibility, because in the end, I mean, we assume that the witness will be obviously supporting the case of the other side. So, I mean, he would rather err on the side of supporting the other side. And it's hard to have a witness just coming across as someone who blatantly lied. And if you do have that, then that's a good line of questioning that you may use, and that's the additional advantage that we see as civil lawyers, but not the real confirmation of something that is just in the witness statement. You already have that. That's how.
Suppose the witness statement contains lies, misrepresentations, and omissions.
Well, I mean, that's that's the issue. That's the issue. But I mean, I think, I mean, if the rule is such that you need to have some documents that is already on the record to challenge that testimony, again, our reaction is it's already in the record. We can use that contradictory statement in our next brief and say, he said that, but document X says the opposite. And so that's why we have to make kind of an additional step to understand why we're doing this with the witness there. Because, I mean, the inclination would be to say, don't let the witness explain the contradiction or provide a justification. You have one document saying X and a witness statement saying Y, and that's the most that you can get for your case. I'm being a little bit extreme, but just to let you understand where we come from.
In the book, with which some of you are more familiar than others, there's chapter 3 on confrontation, techniques for impeachment by Bill Rowley, Marcus Conan, and one of our panelists in the second panel, Robert Wisner, say that you should try to elicit favorable information to you. We should not try, not try to elicit information favorable to your client. What you should do, since the witness has not had a chance to build up credibility, you should hit him right away and not save impeachment for later stages. In other words, hit the impeachment right away because you got little time. So if you pursue, there is a technique of saying, well, we'll get the best information we can from this witness that favors our client's case because he may not have said some things that he should have said, and then we'll attack him on his credibility. And their position is, go for the jugular right away. Now, do you, as counsel, follow what you might call a more traditional technique of making nice to begin and then getting a little tougher later on? David?
Well, Larry, I think it depends. It depends in this sense. If credibility is the issue with this witness, or the principal issue that you want to leave some indelible impression on the mind of the tribunal, then I'd say yes, go for the jugular. That's what this witness is going to be about. This is going to be you want to leave the cross-examination with the tribunal doubting that they should put any weight on this person's testimony. Go for it. Don't beat around the bush, in my view. On the other hand, if you're going to use this witness to highlight your own case or to corroborate one of your witnesses, you can be as nice as you like. You know, the cat won't lick the cream if you can be sweet to them and say, now, you know, Mr. So-and-so or Dr. So-and-so who's with my client, and you've been friends for 37 years, and you don't know anybody in the world who's more esteemed or highly regarded or whose word is more trusted in this field, and have them corroborate everything that the person is about. That's a different approach altogether. That's a different objective. But if your intention is to undermine their credibility or to show that they are rather loose with their definitiveness of what they're prepared to say about things, then I think you have to get right after it. And I think, though, in a hearing room, it's different than a courtroom in this sense. It's a quieter place. You're often sitting at the same table. The showmanship should be kept to a minimum. It really should be more down-to-earth, conventional conversation with that witness. And so raising your voice tends to be out of place. Being rude or disagreeable with a witness is certainly out of place. Tribunals are, I think, easily affected by bad manners, and so counsel have to watch it. Yes, go for the jugular, but in a very gentlemanly and or ladylike way, so that it can be heard and be persuasive, and everybody gets the point. And sometimes you actually feel yourself squirming for the sake of the witness. You realize they really have been caught in a bad position. They have overstated their views or something similar. But it's all done very neatly and very straightforwardly.
Let's talk about the technique of doing this. Ben talked about the specifics of asking questions. And how do you, if you've got a really nice statement that is directly contradictory to what is set out in the witness statement, what's the most effective way to use it? I mean, how much drama do you try to extract from this? Frank?
Well, it depends on how dramatic it really is in a couple different ways. I mean, is it just contradictory and it's not material to the case, or is it something that's really material to the case? I don't think you use sort of the U.S. courtroom drama that you might see on a television show in an arbitration hearing. I think, I agree with Davey. Let's just get to the point, and we can do it neatly and relatively politely, simply showing the first part of the statement of the statement that you're being contradicted. Verify that that's the testimony, and then simply getting out the document and asking a few questions about, this is a memo you prepared. You need to ask a few questions about the impeaching document to show that this is something reliable, either that the witness wrote it, maybe it's part of their audit report or some minutes that they keep all the time, to show that it's got some weight to it, but it doesn't need to take a long time, and it doesn't need to be done particularly aggressively. The tribunals have seen this before. They'll get the point, and they, in my experience, they really don't like too much drama. You get this, they feel uncomfortable for the witness if they feel like you're overbearing on them in a kind of a caustic way.
Can I just add, since we're in this very techie environment, a lot of the hearings we've all been involved in involve using technology and displaying images on the screen. And of course, one quite effective technique where you have a direct contradiction between a document and a witness statement is the split screen. So you set it up with, you said in your witness statement paragraph 46, X, and here's a document that you wrote in November of 2003, and going to page 2 of that document, paragraph 3, you said in that document Y, and you don't need to make a big deal about it, and then you've got both of them up on the screen, and you can see very clearly that Y is different from X, and that this is what he said in his witness statement, and this is what he said in the document. So technology can, I think, be an effective way to really sort of drill that home for the arbitrators without getting up and waving your arms and setting off fireworks.
Do you try to get the witness to be super committed to what he said in his witness statement so that he's further out on the branch of the tree when you're about to saw it off? Or is that over-egging the pudding or something in the sense of you're overdoing what you have? You got any thoughts on? I mean, how do you? To what extent do you want to extract drama from something really is good? Witness says something on cross. This is the way the market works, and then you say, have you always had this view? Yes, of course, I've always had this view. I've always strongly believed it, and so on. This is an actual experience of mine, and if you've always had this view, what do you think about this statement? And paraphrasing contradictory statement, and then say, did you ever say anything to that effect? Again, one little step. And then taking the actual words and saying, did you ever say blah, blah? And in my case, the witness said, no, I would never use language like that. And we had his PhD dissertation, and said, didn't you in fact write a PhD dissertation on this very subject, and didn't you not say such and such on page 34? That's pretty good stuff. It doesn't happen every day, so you kind of want to make this witness not only incorrect, but totally unreliable, because he's disavowing his own stuff. Now, Sophie, I see you making faces. This is too much drama?
I think that's great from counsel's perspective, but I know quite a lot of arbitrators will have no patience with that. They will say, well, so what, 20 years ago in its PhD, he changed his mind. Why did you change your mind? Was there a reason? I think that would be
he just told us. He's always said
everyone's entitled to change their mind. It's a little bit like challenging arbitrators because they've written some article stating one thing, and then they're asked to decide differently in a case. To me, it's issue conflict. It goes some way, but I think the drama overdoes what, the purpose that you'll achieve. And with civil law arbitrators, if I may, perhaps from my own experience, they're just going to hate you, and probably not attach the importance to what you're trying to achieve. I don't know, I may be wrong.
Well, you think this is bullying and harassment and
that's not what I said, Counselor. That is
witnesses?
not what I said. I did not use those words. I did say that it was, in terms of cost-benefit analysis, I think it's not worth your cost.
I guess that tells us we need to be mindful of our tribunal when we do things like this. Carlo, you want to make a comment?
No, I think that's that's kind of our approach to cross-examination. Meaning, if we have to choose, we probably do not spend a lot of time on credibility of the witness in cross-examination, and we probably try to get additional information on things that are not said in a witness statement and may be useful, or work on other aspects, and credibility, leave it aside, and then use the contradictory statements and documents in the briefs to show that, contemporaneous written evidence obviously should have more weight than what the witness is saying now before the tribunal for this particular case. So I think, that's kind of our mindset and what we normally do. So, you see from these various issues that cross-examination for us has additional kind of hurdles and things we think about because we don't give this as for granted, something that necessarily help you advance your case. But nonetheless, we're getting used more and more with that. But the good thing about it is that even on the arbitration tribunals, you may have different cultures and different approaches, and this is obviously helpful to make the thing less extreme in terms of having one counsel from the civil side, the other one from the Anglo-Saxon world. And I think the international arbitration word is somewhere in the middle, and these differences are becoming less and less important because people tend to do the same thing and probably get to the middle of the two words in a way. And I guess that's my view. It also affects over time. It will also affect the civil procedure in court. They will tend to find a middle way, and we will probably no longer have this clash of cultures in 50 years from now, so to say.
How about the others who haven't spoken on this particular subject? What do you do when you have something that looks really good, assuming the witness, in fact, reaffirms his position and says that he always held that same position? Do do you, what do you do with it? Do you try to dramatize it, or do you just stick it up on the screen and say, here's Exhibit A and Exhibit B, compare the two? I mean, Ben would say, did I read this correctly? And go on.
I mean, that's just the safest approach, or to put it, up on the screen. I agree. The technology is wonderful these days, because it's much easier for a tribunal to appreciate the difference when you've just shown it on a screen as opposed to just hearing it orally. A lot of this, though, does depend on how the witness is coming across to the tribunal. That if they come across as, somebody that's pompous and full of themselves, you can be more aggressive with them than you can be with somebody who is. It's assumed that the tribunal, in my experience, wants these witnesses to feel like they're guests in their proceeding, and you're going to treat them like a guest until they start acting badly. I have had tribunals tell witnesses that they should stop advocating and just answer the question. And that's ultimately what you want, not that you need to be so aggressive, but the tribunal sees that the witness is out of line and the tribunal's willing to go after them a little bit. When you have a witness like that, yeah, you can use a little bit more drama, I think, but you're really, when you're sitting there doing your cross-examination, you need to have these kind of feelers out there as to how is this person coming across to this particular tribunal? What is the reaction there? And so how does that influence how I need to ask my next questions? I wouldn't necessarily plan out aggressive, not aggressive. I would assume not aggressive unless it feels like there's an opening there that you'll get a positive response.
Would any of you have taken a different approach from the one I took, which I described briefly? That is to say, build up to it and get a little drama, then get lucky when he says, I never would use language like that.
Well, you used the operative words. I was thinking about it when you described that examination, because it seems to me you got a little bit lucky, with all due respect, that the question, so you've never said anything contrary to this before. I mean, a really astute witness, now maybe picking up on Frank's point, this was an arrogant blowhard who you knew was going to say, oh no, I've been consistent throughout my entire 45-year career and never said anything inconsistent in my entire life. But very few people are stupid enough to say something like that on the stand. They're more likely to say, as Sophie suggested, well, look, I've written a lot of things over the years, and and I've done a lot of research, and sometimes my opinions have changed slightly, and if you show me a specific article, I can discuss it. He's not going to just sort of say, no, I've never changed my opinion in my life. So you got a little lucky. I'm not sure I would have asked that question.
Which question would you not have asked?
Well, I thought you posed the question, have you ever said anything contrary to that in your career?
No, I didn't say it that way.
Okay. It came out that way.
Have you always had this same view?
Well, okay, same thing. So you took a little bit of a risk there, in my view.
Yeah. David?
I've seen counsel try to dramatize what they think is the golden ring of some basic contradiction, and they'll ask the witness general questions like, you do understand your duty to the tribunal to be truthful, you do understand and appreciate that the tribunal is endeavoring to put weight on your evidence, but can't do so if you're going to give us misleading information.